And now, guys, there will be no video in between because we are already here to meet Craig. Craig, we give you the floor and you have your time.
Awesome, awesome. Good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, wherever you're tuning in from. My name is Craig Smith. I'm going to share my screen right now, and we will go through today's session, which really is all around giving you guys, well, actually, I'll stop there. Do you see my screen okay, Sophia?
Yes, we can see your screen. All good.
Perfect. Awesome. Thanks so much. So thanks again, everyone, for the time today. I'm looking forward to the session with you. As you know, I'm eager to share a lot of user experience and conversion optimization data that we've derived at Trinity to give you guys new ideas, to give you guys new perspectives into how you can improve your page templates to make your websites make you more money. And that's really what this all boils down to, right? That's why everyone's here. We're trying to make our sites be more friendly for users so we have more conversions and ultimately more profits. The goal for my presentation today is that you leave with a plan, and that the frameworks we talk about, as well as the exact design examples we show you, will give you real insight into know exactly what you need to do to grow faster. And I want this to be an interactive session. So if you have questions, please drop them in the chat, and Sophia, interrupt me at any time with any information there or questions that kind of correspond to some of the aspects we'll be discussing. But just real quick about me, why you should listen to me today. I've been in the e-commerce and digital category for 21 years. I started as a strategist at Cigna Corporation, which is one of America's largest insurers, then worked for eBay, again, as a strategist, and then started Trinity back in 2006 as a company that was focused on helping brands generate incremental e-commerce sales through data and sophistication. We've been doing user experience testing since 2009. We're a premier partner with VWO, an amazing testing and research tool. And literally all I do day in and day out is go through websites and data, looking at Google Analytics, looking at the presentation of websites to their core audience. And hopefully that experience will lend itself to giving you guys some good nuggets to take away from. As far as what we're going to go through today, I'll spend a little bit of time on a framework, but really the most meat on this presentation is going to be around their test data. Some high-performing experiments that we've run over the last 6 months, and what was the value and impact that was derived from those experiments. We're going to get down to the nitty-gritty. What was the exact specific KPI and the exact specific incremental gain? Or in some instances, I threw a couple in there that are, you're going to be surprised on. But really, again, goal is to give you some ideas and examples so you can replicate this performance. Because what we found is usability enhancements, especially in e-commerce contexts, tend to replicate performance when you leverage them in an alternative website. So hopefully you get some great ideas. And a quick takeaway, this presentation, don't feel like you have to, take furious notes or screenshots. You can email me at the end and I'd be happy to send it to you. Okay, so when you're starting your UX process, right, when you're looking to make your website more effective, you must obviously plan out your game plan through research. And I know a lot of this has been talked about already, and so I'm going to kind of go quickly through this section and get to the data, but I just want to make sure I incorporate it because it is such an important piece to understand and to make sure that you leverage. The first piece is ensuring that you have data integrity. Going through your web analytics installation and making sure that the tracking, tagging, and all of the relevant information is being captured so you can make the right business decisions. Almost every time I look at a Google Analytics installation in usually a prospect of Trinity, someone we're going to do some work with, there's gaps. There's gaps in goals. There's gaps in filters. There's gaps in cross-channel tracking or cross-domain tracking. And now with the advancement of Google Analytics 4, this is only becoming more complex with more questions. So the first thing you want to do is make sure that you audit your analytics, that you get visibility on all of your page templates and there's no pockets or inconsistencies that'll lead to bad data, because that data is going to be what really drives your understanding where are the squeaky parts of the wheel. And for example, what you're looking at here is modeling out progression data on a certain page template in order to generate the economic benefit for a change. In this case, we're looking at the add to cart percentage. This top graph was for the desktop segment, and the bottom is the mobile segment. And we're able to kind of see, okay, here is this right here is the current state. Your current state desktop progression is 14.44%. If we're able to move the needle to 15.8% through testing and optimization, that's going to drive $19,000 more in sales per month. This is one template. It's very important that you look at this type of progression data, what we call micro conversion data, on all of your pages. So this way you can really understand where is the greatest opportunity. Now, from there, you now have an understanding of what's happening. The analytics tells you what's happening, but research is going to tell you why it's happening. Part of the research should be what I would call a heuristic review, where you look at certain elements of your site, your brand presentation, your funnel flow. How do you use trust and security? How is your mobile experience rendering? And you're scoring it in some way, shape, or form so you can prioritize the elements of the pages and templates that are underperforming into a plan. Look at your competition as well. Score yourself against the competition, because if you can identify benchmarks and tactics that they're doing that you're not, it's a great way for you to identify some ideas to bring into your roadmap. I know this has been talked about a lot today, but scroll mapping to see how deep people go into a page depth, very, very important. This way you can isolate, especially if you have an offer that's below the fold and you look at your scroll maps, that offer is probably being missed by half of your users. Try testing it above the fold in a sticky header or maybe in the core real estate. Heatmaps as well is, again, I think it was talked about recently, but this is an example with a B2B customer of ours in the e-commerce category. Look how much the click density centers on that top left element within the grid. This type of information helps us in making merchandising decisions and making site design decisions on where we want to put the core call to action or top selling product on a given template. And then lastly, scenario testing and user testing is really, really important. In the old days, we used to have to write out a discussion guide and go recruit users within a store or online, and actually I do a physical test where we're recording the movements using Camtasia Studio and packaging it all up. Now this is much easier. You can do scenario testing and user testing with a variety of online tools. And the way you want to go through this is based upon some of these pages that you've identified gaps in. You want to create scenarios that associate to these pages. And you can see the example I'm reading right here. It says, use the searcher navigation to find a square gas burning fire table that is 36 inches to 42 inches in width. So you ask the question, the user goes through the process, they give kind of verbal feedback as well. This small investment helps tremendously in deriving where you should focus your time. And then ultimately you want to create a dynamic, or in our case, as a testing roadmap. We use what we call a pie rating that says, okay, these tests or these page improvements, what is the potential of it? What is the importance? And what is the ease of implementation? And a lot of this correlates to how much the page we're going to affect, or the section of the site we're going to affect, is being utilized in paid channels. Really, that's where you're going to get the most compound effect in your business. And then that creates a prioritization plan. And then here you can kind of see in the plan, the checkout page is the first target. So this process is something you need to go through, the analytical review to understand what's going on, the template performance, the micro conversion data, the research information to help support your thesis around what's going to change, and then also to gain new insights, and then the prioritization of how your tests are going to be deployed. Now, when you start deploying tests, it's very much a cycled approach of designing, running the test, analyzing the data, and then ultimately implementing on the site. We start every test with a test plan, and you probably should as well. Something that's going to say, what is the expected launch date? What is the population of devices? What is it, a split test? Is it a multivariate test? How long is it going to run? What is going to be changed? And then in parallel with that, the actual creative of what's going to be changed. What nuances are going to be manipulated using a testing tool like Visual Website Optimizer or Optimizely. After that happens, once you get your creative done, you need development, obviously JavaScript and front-end specialists to make these tests light up. Now, with Trinity, we're using VWO as really the delivery mechanism. Their internal editor you can use for basic changes, button colors, maybe some text on a page, etc., slight modules. But when we run experiments, we're doing major overhauls to pages. And because of that, we want to use custom JavaScript and custom CSS. And that's what fires off in the browser to make the page experience map to the previous creative we just talked about. And then don't neglect quality assurance and cross-browser testing. This is really, really important. And cannot be neglected, because you're going to get a lot of your traffic coming in on these older browser types and older or different device types. So we want to make sure you're looking at Opera, you're looking at Explorer, you're looking at Edge, you're looking at Safari, and obviously Chrome and Firefox and all the different variations to make sure it's rendering perfectly. And when it does, the test goes live. What you're looking at here is a Google Data Studio export to kind of show how the control is performing versus the variations. You can do this in your testing platform or whoever you want or like, but really the key is that 95%, the statistical significance interval, which tells you, hey, version B beat version A. At that point, you have a decision to make. You can either hard code it into the cloud, or you can hard code it into your site, or perpetually serve it in the cloud using your testing system. So that just gives you a baseline feel of a conversion optimization methodology to embrace in your business to really execute these types of tests. And now that leads us to the section and probably what you guys are most interested in, which test one. And I'm going to start out here on this category page. So this is showing a customer in the technology space, and you can see they came to us, and they came to us with this header and the category level that had these radio button presentations. We changed the presentation to be more of a drop-down centric presentation with the thesis that it was more modern and that we would be able to kind of get more product above the fold in a desktop view pane, which is their core audience. Interestingly enough, that presentation, version B, outperformed version A by 30% in category to product progression. And again, within this experiment, our goal was to reduce friction in terms of selection. And what we thought is that this initial presentation was somewhat overwhelming. It's creating what we call analysis paralysis, where there's just too many things for the human brain to digest at one time. And because of that, this more of a consolidated view worked better to the tune of 30%. The next test to show and to talk about, I'm going to get a quick drink of water actually, is a mobile presentation. This is a mobile presentation grid on the right, where there's 4 images versus a enlarged single image or grid, single card view. This was for obviously a larger apparel retailer in e-commerce. And, I would have thought that the big one would have won, but ultimately version B performed much better. This version of the multiple pictures, the 2-column presentation, drove a almost 11% increase to conversion rate versus the larger view pane of the product. The next one takes us to the travel category, and a Trinity customer that sells high-end packages in Hawaii. And this was the original version a tab-based layout with the grid presentation, the ultimate goal of getting users to click on the Book Now buttons that are associated to their respective columns. We looked at the progression data. We thought we could get more juice out of that fruit. So we created this alternative presentation using Visual Website Optimizer, very, very different. Now, what are we doing here? We're reducing the analysis. We're making it easier to digest, giving them alternative pathways to view details, and obviously giving them the Book Now, and also giving the opportunity to click into the secondary packages. Version B outperformed the control version with a 19% increase to progression rate. So that means that 19% more people went into the booking engine than the original. A very, very great example of, again, analysis paralysis. We required less scrolling. We split up the packages to make it less overwhelming. And by doing so, we're able to gather that gain. The next is a product detail page scenario of stock data. We're looking at version A with the stock data being included above the Add to Cart button, and version B not having it. Obviously, version A was the better approach. By displaying the stock information on the site when we had quantity under 10 remaining, that drove a 29.69% increase to conversion. Again, this was the one that we created as the variable version. The way you do that is in most e-commerce platforms, you can take the inventory count for a specific SKU and inject it via JS into your testing platform and into your page. If you don't have urgency inventory threshold firing off today, that is in any context where you have inventory, one of the best experiments that you can deploy to make your conversion rate increase. The next is a checkout summary page. And what you're looking at here is the last mile, the review order page. This was version A, and we made changes to version A by reinforcing what we call value proposition messaging. In any business, in any entity, in terms of lead gen or retail, you need to distill down the key elements of why someone should buy from you and simplify it in graphical format and make sure that you convey that at key spots of abandonment. In this case, by telling the user when the product was shipping dynamically in an image, giving them specifics about when they'll receive more here, and then the next shipment. For this subscription package, this drove significant improvement, an 8% increase to overall conversion by just incorporating the value proposition messaging in that inflection point, in that place where users have those logistical questions. You know, I always talk about in e-commerce, there's those three things you have to hit: security, shipping, and guarantees. And even outside of e-commerce, if you look at lead generation, maybe you don't have security because you're not dealing with credit cards, but you still have guarantees. You still have your core value prop. You still have your social proof. You need to make sure it's embedded into your experience to gain the trust of both shoppers and visitors to your site. This next one is a pure checkout navigation test that was occurring within the Magento e-commerce platform. And you can see this was the core version. Version A, the control version, I should say. A very simplistic test in version B. And what we did by removing that drop down, or excuse me, that top nav, and just that slight change, we thought would make a big difference, but it did not. And it's interesting in this specific context, you know, it was not a winning experiment, but in the past we've run this test before and it has won. So it just kind of proved to us you never quite know truly what the winner is going to be, even though you've done it in the past. You have to test it. The next one is a B2B quote module. And this B2B quote module is geared around lead gen. Where this was the control version, version A, this was version B. What we look to do is simplify the form, try to make it a little bit more simplistic. And in doing so, got a 28% increase in form submissions. We looked to condense the fields, reordered them, and also add a global information bar where the propositions were promoted. The call to action was also manipulated again in this new form, and that drove a 28% increase. Slight changes, big wins. The next test presentation is in the personalization and customization category. Now, the question here is, does this, we'll call it overlay customization approach, work better than a more subtle approach where the fields would be presented in a module that was essentially in the same viewing pane as the original? This was the control version. This was the new version, version B. Version B outperformed significantly over version A, creating or affirming the hypothesis of not overwhelming the user and making it a little bit more subtle and making it easier. So the new functionality that we created for this personalization process, allowed us to run these A/B tests and find that these layouts would be more effective. It was a 21% increase to conversion. The next is homepage created in a lead gen environment. And you can see here was version A. We used, the existing version was a cartoon type of animational graphic. And our concern was, hey, maybe we would try some lifestyle imagery. Would the lifestyle imagery beat the creative graphic? Ultimately, it did not. By switching out the homepage illustration, we expected to see the increase to performance from the homepage. But what we did not see was that increase. Users responded better to the illustration images, and we use that intelligence to drive further site changes throughout the site. This next one is also an e-commerce example, talking about free shipping and the free shipping value proposition that most brands take with their e-commerce experience. We see it mostly in the header, global banners, but we were very curious that if we incorporated a dynamic module that you can see right here that took into account the value of the cart and showed them a graphic that says, hey, you're just $8 away from free shipping, would that dramatically improve checkouts within our customer? Again, this was a functionality that was not incorporated in the e-commerce system. We were able to replicate this function using JavaScript, custom CSS, as well as the VWO optimization platform. We ran that version versus the existing control version. And ultimately, version B was the winner. Again, I wanted to make sure I put in some ones that it doesn't always work what you think. And this was a great example of, we really thought that this would undoubtedly beat this version. It did not. Maybe it was the bigger subtotal, maybe it was the simplicity, but we did not see that version being statistically significant to be better at the goal of getting more customers. The next is a checkout page, or you can maybe replicate this to any page that has a significant number of fields. The takeaway here is, again, overwhelming to the brain, right? A lot of fields to digest, and the gray contrast with the white background, we felt even added more just exhaustion in absorbing the information. This was the new version we created. We incorporated a more of an Amazon feel to a buy box, made the email address at the top of the of the form. So that way we could do abandoned cart or abandoned checkout emails from this page on that first field inclusion. And then we also made it more simple, got rid of some things, use the billing, shipping, automatically generating fields with the check. And this, not to our surprise, drove a 12% increase in conversion. We were really excited about this. We felt obviously that the new variation was much more easier to digest, much more easier for users to continue down the conversion path and complete their purchase. And it drove nearly a 12% overall increase to their conversion rate. So I wanted to make sure I left time for questions and love to hear about your businesses and your thoughts around that. But really the final takeaways, things that I want to make sure I reiterate, is first, fix your data. It makes no sense to test on an analytical installation that does not have accurate integrity data. So you can hire someone, you can use tools that maybe exist in the marketplace, but you got to make sure you start there. Get your data in order first and understand how your users are behaving. Prioritizing customer insights, again, back to the earlier theme of analytics tells you what's happening, customer insights tells you why it's happening. Don't neglect this step. Do surveys, check out your heat maps, look at your scroll maps, do online usability testing. Present scenarios to panels and have them go through the scenarios so you can kind of get ideas on what your testing roadmap is going to be. The next takeaway, reduce analysis paralysis. Look at your pages. Where are they overwhelming to the human brain? Where are you presenting more than 6 boxes for someone to fill out in a given presentation? That is too much. Try to make it easier. Try to make it more fluid. Help the user by don't making them think. And then lastly, measure in micro conversions. Too often, I talk to brands, I talk to executives who look at conversion rate optimization in a vacuum where only conversion rate is what they care about. Hey, our conversion rate is 3%, it needs to be 4%. That's the wrong way to do it. You need to look at, as we talked about before, a page template level. What is the percentage of people who view the category page to make it to the subcategory page? What is the percentage of people that look to a product page and make it to a cart? And how is that variable across desktop and mobile? That is the intelligence that will open up your opportunity and give you, again, the most economically friendly places for you to drive revenue within your business. Okay, so thank you so much for the time today. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to some interesting questions. Feel free to email me for a copy of this presentation. You can do so at csmith@trinity.one. And also, if you'd like a free diagnostic assessment of your business from myself, we'd be happy to spend a half hour on a call, walk through your site, run it through some tools, and you and I will go through your site and really have a preliminary idea of some things that you could potentially execute and growth levers you can pull in the short term. Okay. All right. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing, go back to the broadcast, and Sophia, I'll let you take it from there.
Craig, thank you so much for the presentation. We have some very nice commentary saying that you have a great presentation. Thank you. So it's a nice sign. And so a couple of questions. What services do you use every day to analyze user behavior, and which ones could you recommend for small businesses or even freelancers?
Yeah, great question. So without question, Hotjar. Okay, so Hotjar is one. Hotjar is going to give you video recordings, which is awesome. It gives you form analytics, which is helping you derive how far someone goes down in a form. And it also gives you basic surveying. So if you want to have a post-purchase survey or an abandonment survey, they might render on a checkout page or a cart page to say, hey, why are you leaving today? If you can, sometimes you can deploy surveys using what's called exit intent technology. When a mouse moves up to the upper left-hand corner of a browser, you know someone's leaving, you can fire off a survey. And sometimes you find out information like, oh, your shipping's too high, or it's going to take too long to get to me, those sorts of things. So Hotjar is one. Really like Crazy Egg, that's another great one. There's a lot of cheap other tools out there. I actually have a webinar that I did in the past, 25 low-cost tools for this type of stuff. Email me and I'll be happy to send you a link to that webinar. It's behind a gated thing, but I'll get you the file.
Okay, cool. That will be awesome to share this information with our listeners. One more question. So do you analyze the first click on the traffic channels?
Analyze the first click, of course. Yeah, I mean, when you look at a first click, you're looking at someone coming in on a landing page, and it's going to be really different between organic traffic versus paid traffic versus direct traffic versus affiliate. I mean, those are the main kind of segments. The organic traffic usually is coming in higher up in the funnel, that research query. We see it in our site, in our business, that 60% of our traffic is coming into our blog and our learning center. They're not coming to us with commercial intent. They're coming to us with learning intent. So our goal there is to make the session geared around learning, geared around opting in for them to get something of value to help their education. So when it comes to a standpoint of clicks, look at your bounce rate on those clicks, look at the time on site on those clicks, look at the pages per session on those clicks, look at the traffic. Where is it coming from? You'd be surprised. You might get a lot of traffic. We see it all the time from different languages, different countries, and you can make people feel more at home. If I'm getting 20% of my traffic from the United Kingdom, and I present on all that traffic segment, welcome shoppers or welcome UK visitors, click here to learn how we serve the United Kingdom, that's going to reduce your bounce rate. That's going to make your session so much more valuable, personalized, and effective. That's going to grow your conversion. So first click, where they're coming from, and the engagement, without question, really, really, really important.
Thank you so much for sharing. If you have time for one more question, can we?
I have time till 11 o'clock.
Okay, that's cool. So there are a lot of different approaches to analyzing the sales performance on your website. Which one could you give us maybe like some steps on how to analyze and which elements to analyze on your website to understand how your sales performance is going?
Right. So the first distinction, obviously, is, are you e-commerce or are you lead generation? Are you looking to get an actual credit card, purchase behavior, or are you looking to get just a form fill? That's number one, because that's going to really change what you monitor, what you track. Looking at e-commerce, that's what we do, is that progression rate review on a template basis divided by device type is really, really important. How does my homepage do, desktop versus mobile? How does my category page do, desktop versus mobile? And looking at it, each page has a goal, right? The homepage, you want to get someone to either a merchandise spotlight or your search box or a category page. That's it. What is the percentage of people who take that action? You need to measure that, and then that's going to help you get the insight to say, okay, what is, again, the economic impact when I go from point A to point B on a metric? So in e-commerce, like if I'm looking at the mobile add to cart ratio, right, it's 12%. And I have 100,000 sessions that come per month to the mobile product pages across my entire site. If I move it to 15%, that's going to equal 3,000 more sessions in the funnel. What is that going to mean if everything else holds true? So that's kind of what you need to go through in an e-commerce viewpoint. You got to go through that progression rate review. And we do this for brands and businesses when we're in kind of pre-sales discussion, helping them understand their economic upside. On the lead gen side, with that, you're going to probably get, again, the different traffic types, and you're going to want to create calls to action and conversion points in your site that speak to it. So higher funnel learning, you need to make sure you're accurately tracking folks in those categories. And then if you really want to be progressive in a B2B lead gen environment, if someone opts in to, let's say, you're a software provider and you have software for the education category, they opt into an educational white paper or they opt into an educational webinar. At that point, your site presentation should be geared from that point forward all around education for that visitor, because hypothetically, they've shown the propensity and raised their hand and said, hey, I'm in the education market. So when they come back to the homepage again, lead with your white paper about education, 10 ways to lower costs. Lead with the homepage creative. We helped Yale University lower costs by 20%. And incorporate a sequential messaging system in your marketing automation tool, like a HubSpot or SharpSpring like we use, to fire off a category-specific cadence of messages that are going to speak to that segment. So that's really in both areas how I would approach it, depending on if you're in lead gen or e-commerce.
Wow, that was such a clear answer to this question. Thank you. And maybe we have, well, let's see, because there are some questions that are waiting for to be answered. So let's say we speak about the UX experiments in general, right? Are there any recommendations from Google that you follow specifically in this sphere?
From Google?
Yeah.
Google is interesting. I mean, sometimes people come to us and they say, hey, does this affect organic search? Right. When someone's concerned about Google, you're mostly concerned about your search ranking, your algorithmic effect from your website. And testing tools, we've never seen it affect organic search. And I think the reason is Google's smart. They have their own tool, Google Optimize. It's a free tool. We don't use it. We don't think it's best in class, but it's there. And if you want to start in testing, it's a great place to start. I mean, it just will get the mindset, the culture of experimentation in your team. That's more important than anything else. It doesn't have the bells and whistles of some of the paid products, the ones that we use. We love VWO. We've been using it for 10 years. But my point is that a testing tool, an experiment, isn't going to affect your Google rankings. What will affect your Google rankings is you re-engineering your page to be better, right? We run let's say we have a site-wide test on your blog pages, and we want to incorporate some nuances to the page to get the hypothesis of increased dwell time and average time on page, and we're going to reduce bounce rate. That's our goals for the test. We incorporate these elements, and guess what? That wins. And 20% of the sessions are now more productive because they've gone to a next page. When we hard code that change into the site, and Google starts seeing that increased engagement from the enhancement that was derived from the test, they're going to reward you in the rankings because you're delivering a better experience. Google Analytics is so ubiquitous, it's on every site pretty much on the web almost. When they see that added layers of interactivity, when they see less of a bounce coming back from that original search query, they're going to reward you. So not a direct impact from when you put the snippets in your site and run the tests, but there will be a residual impact after the new change goes live and you've incorporated better experience for your visitors.
Wow, yeah. And experiments are a really cool thing to implement, not only in business, but in your real life, right?
Yeah, sure.
Experimenting and getting better.
Sure, on my kids, if I take their phones away, what happens?
Let's see. Have you run those tests?
With my kids, if I did that, the system would crash.
Okay, you won't be able to attend this conference, right? Cool. Great. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your insights, for your knowledge, and for sharing. This was so interesting to listen to.
Awesome. Thanks everybody for having me. It was a great time, and I wish everyone the best. Take care. Happy optimizing.
Bye-bye.
See you later.